I'm giving up on this bloody technology. I swear I'm going to give up on it. All right. So first things first. For those of you who are just joining, welcome to the Negotiation Club. Now this is our pop-up practice, and we've got a bit of a crowd here this time round as well. Okay, so we're going to have our little negotiations. But other than our two miscreants here, Mike and Fred, we have also got Jyoti and Keenan. So I'm gonna hand it over quickly. We're gonna have a few minutes before we actually get into the practice, but let's have a little bit of an introduction. So, Jyoti, do you want to explain your the excitement for being here and why you're here and where you've come from on that side?
Well, hello everybody. My name is Jyoti. I have just actually finished my 4 weeks of negotiation, received my certificate as well. Need to celebrate that a little bit more, but so just finished. I have actually graduated in December last year, so I'm now doing my master's for the BPC. And yes, I thought you can never go wrong with learning and sharpening up on your negotiation. So that led me to Phil. And yes, that leads me here today as well.
Way! Yeah, and it's great because, as you say, you've just finished the 4 weeks of practical practice. So this is where you kind of learn to practice. But you've actually done that with the University of Law. So there's been quite a group of you doing that, which I always enjoy. I love law students when they do it. It's brilliant. And we've got Keenan. Keenan, do you want to? Because Keenan, you and I do go way back here, but do you want to explain a little bit?
Yeah. I think it was in the summer of 2020, which, my word, I think that's 4 years ago now. I did one of Phil's really great courses, sort of same as Jyoti. Got the certificate, one of the first when it was when TNC was in its early stages, and yeah, just learned a lot of great skills, which I was really happy to move along, and it's actually been really helpful and stuff. Actually, just kind of going through the gears, doing university, and actually doing that sort of in the assessment center and stuff for the firm that I'm now a future trainee at BCLP.
Because you just got a training contract, haven't you, as well?
Yes, I have. We have a training contract now, BCLP. Yeah,
it's great.
Well,
I mean,
yeah, and then
it's been, as you say, it's like 2020. I think you were on either the first or the second cohort, the first or second one I ever did.
So. Yeah, it was really, really quite early on, and I found out about it quite late as well. It was really quite funny how I found out, because I wanted to ask Annie, and then she kind of
Annie Tam
said, "Oh yeah, I talked to Phil." Yes, exactly, and that's how it gone.
Because if I'm right, Annie Tam was another law student, but she was at York University 2020, and you was it Lancaster?
Yes, the arch rivals.
That's it. Yeah, York. For those who don't know, York and Lancaster, they have like a negotiation competition, and it's always kind of high intensity. And Annie was in York, and she actually came to one of the first cohorts as well. So it was great. And then ever since then, we've grown. I mean, in fact, Jyoti, I think your cohort, which we finished this week, was like 186 or something.
Yeah,
so we've done a few of them since. So yeah. Well, listen, it's great to have you guys here. We can already see that you set yourselves up with the seller and the buyers. So for those people who are joining and starting to watch, you can see then who our negotiators are going to be. And obviously this time round, Fred, myself, and Mike, we're gonna try and give a little bit of feedback here. Now, Fred is going to go into his corner. He's going to try and give a little bit of insight from his sales perspective on the selling side. So we'll see what happens there. And Mike's from the procurement side, and I'm just going to balance it in the middle. I'm just going to sort of see what I observe and maybe give a bit back as well. Now we're going to start the negotiations probably in about 4 or 5 minutes. Just get a few more people to join on the audience. But if anybody has any questions at all, feel free to start thinking about them. Feel free to add them into the comments. Mike does keep an eye on the comments as well. So if you do get some questions, we'll go through. And of course, after we've done the negotiation, which is only going to be 4 minutes, we'll give some feedback, and then we'll see where some of the conversations go as well. Because it's always something new. It always fascinates me what we do. Just don't know where we're going to go with it. There you are. Right. Anybody got anything happened in the last week or two to report on?
Ooh, I think my connection's down a little bit. Oh yeah, I wrote an exam yesterday.
Hey, is that your final
Yeah.
exam? Oh, you got some more.
Oh, I've got a ton more for this sort of like for this small sort of period, this exam period, let's say the spring exam period. It's one of three, so that'll be done, and then I've got some more in August. But yeah,
Just before we started, Mike was
I've
talking
finished mine.
about, how the younger generation have less garbage in their heads than maybe the older generation. But at the same time, I do not miss the exams and all of that palaver as well. I'd rather have the garbage in my head right now, a few years on.
I've just got it stuck in my head. I just did one today and got one next week.
Oh,
It's
no.
all there.
Well, it's always nice to have a little bit of light-hearted relief, which is what this is about as well. It's yeah, you do need to take a break sometimes. And I was on a podcast yesterday. So Dinny, who actually came on the taster, we run this taster once a month as well for people to come along and actually have a practice. So if anybody wants to practice and have a go, haven't done it before, get yourselves over to the negotiation website, thenegotiationclubs.com, and sign up for a taster. We've got one coming up in about 3 or 4 weeks' time. I think, Mike, we actually first met when you came along on a taster as well, didn't you? I think.
Absolutely. That was the first experience that I had with you, and I had such a great experience that I came back, and here we are a couple of years later, trying to make things happen together.
Yeah, it's like a network. It's all friends. I don't know how I met you, Fred, but never mind.
As a haircut club.
Yeah, it is quite funny. You get famous there as well. Oh, it's not too bad. Yeah, so nothing else happening at the moment. Oh, I had a meeting this morning. With a local packaging manufacturer. Because what I'm going to do at the moment, we do have these training sets. So these have like 3 sets of cards in them as well. And I don't know whether have you got the practice one, Mike? Or
yeah, I've got the practice deck, and as well as the stage 1 single variable.
You've got those as well. But what I'm looking to do, and I've got some students joining me in a couple of weeks' time as well, is to look at developing a trainer's set of about 8 different decks that can be used by teachers, lecturers, and trainers to actually engage and use negotiation cards in negotiation courses. So hopefully that's going to come out. And again, I'm actually looking for some negotiation societies to pilot them. So getting them out to the societies to see if they can help them as well. Right. Okay. I think it might be time to start.
Yeah, we have 10 people on observing. That's what LinkedIn says anyway.
That's
9.
all right. I can see, well, obviously upset one. I can only see one on my screen, but that's all right. For those of you who are watching, if you've got any questions, do throw those questions out. And obviously, for those of you who are watching it on the recording, you can go back later and have a look at it. Right, so this is what's going to happen. Okay, so Jyoti, Keenan, you're going to do the negotiation. I'm going to put 4 minutes on our screen. Fred and Mike, I'm going to kick you out just for the moment. Okay. So there's one, and there goes another, and then it's just us. I'm going to move us around just a touch. So that's, there we go. So sit on the left, by on the right, and me on the bottom. So I'm going to put the timer on mine in a minute, okay? Now then, as always, what we're going to do is we're just going to use 4 minutes as our practice time. I'm going to show you your buyer's card and your seller's cards. Now, for those of you who are not familiar with this, we've done this a few times. Basically, we have a seller's card with a break-even point and a buyer's card with a budget. And we're going to negotiate for the price per ton of apples, because that's always our favorite go-to here. And the idea here is that, Jyoti, you're selling apples to Keenan. Keenan, you're going to be buying them. You need to find a satisfactory price between you. Now, it is practice. So as always, it's worth practicing with purpose. And of course, in negotiations, there's many, many tactics. And we've got a selection. We've got a selection of them on cards here. So what we'll do is we'll also show Keenan and Jyoti a tactic. And the idea is that in those 4 minutes, try and use your tactic as well. Now, it might not work for you, which is absolutely fine. Okay, so when you try something that doesn't work, you learn from that. Okay, but you might also practice and get really confident at it as well. So there's definitely things we can do there. Jyoti, Keenan, any questions before we have a go? No? In that
just
case,
excited to get stuck in.
Okay, right. In that case, Keenan, could you look away from the screen just for a moment? Right.
Yeah.
And then, Jyoti, you have a break even. So you need to negotiate a price per ton above that break even. Okay. And a tactic for you. Okay. Right, perfect. Now, Keenan, you can look back. Jyoti, if you look away from the screen just for a moment, please. And Keenan, you have a budget you need to negotiate below. And a tactic for you to practice. Okay. Right, Jyoti, you can look back. So, right, so what I'm going to do, I'm going to put the 4 minutes on the screen. As always, at the end of the 4 minutes, I always ask, what do you think the other person was practicing? Because that's a nice little way of just keeping our observation skills going on our side. And of course, what we'll do then is give a bit of feedback as well, okay? So with that in mind, we have our 4 minutes, and your time starts now.
Hi there, Keenan. How are you?
I'm doing very well, thank you, Jyoti. How are you?
I'm good, thank you. Have you enjoyed the summer?
I have been a great deal. Sun shining, but unfortunately in Manchester it rains a little bit. So
Yeah, we do. We have got the fortune of English weather. So, so what can I get for you then this time round?
So, as you know, I am a farmer. I own a little farm just outside of Blackburn, in the northwest in Lancashire, and I just need a ton of apples. Yeah, I just need a ton of apples.
That sounds good. Well, you've come to the right place. Firstly, could I ask you, what type of apples were you looking for?
I'm not too concerned with the type of apples. Just sort of any kind would be okay.
Would you even green, red apples? Are they all acceptable? Happy with them?
I am looking to go as low as possible. I don't have a great deal of cash. I'm quite strapped at the minute, just with all the costs associated with running my farm. So yeah, I don't have any preference as to type. What is the best offer that you can make for me?
So you're after 1 ton of apples. Usually we do actually do larger quantity sizes, because we also supply for small businesses as well. But I could give you an offer of £750 per ton.
Is there any chance that could go lower?
Well, is there a chance you could increase your quantity size?
I could potentially say that I'd be willing to buy more apples in the future if that is anything that would encourage the price to go down. I could pay potentially £400 for them, but I would struggle to go above that.
Well, £400 is quite low for us. That's actually, that doesn't even leave us with a pound of profit, you can say. But if you were to be placing in a regular order, what would we be talking in terms of, is that every month, 2 months?
I'd say every month. I'm just conscious that we don't have a great deal of time to agree to a deal. So if I said, for example, £495, would that be acceptable to you?
No, unfortunately, that would not scrape it. The best I could offer you actually is if we was to do a reoccurring order of 1 ton of apples every month, I could do you at least £600, and that's me coming down quite substantially.
550?
575.
572?
I'm sorry, it's 575 only.
Oh,
Hey!
oh my. Oh my. That is, can I just say, the number of times that I've done this, and I've done this a couple of times, including obviously the course years ago, that is the closest we've ever come to almost finding the gap. Oh, I think I'm really curious to hear what your cutoff point was.
Well, listen, before we do that, first of all, well done, both of you. Okay, all right, well done, both of you. It's 4 minutes. It's not a great deal of time, but obviously it's not just about trying to make the agreements in there. It's about whether you're able to sort of just apply some of those skills, and also are we picking some things up as well? Because 4 minutes is actually long enough to try something, short enough to be able to reflect upon it. And as I always say, with the negotiation cards, we can have a look at the cards and then perhaps put things into context as well. Now, what I do like is the fact that it all seems nice and easy. I mean, how difficult can it be? But of course, when you get into it, Jyoti, Keenan, it's not quite that easy all the time, is it? So.
It's not hard. Sorry, it's very hard to sell a bunch of apples, I tell you.
Yeah, this is the easy stuff as well. So listen, first things first, Jyoti, the question I always ask is, what do you think the other person was? Jyoti, any thoughts as to perhaps what tactics maybe Keenan was having a go at?
I'm inclined to say if you, then we, but I have a funny feeling it's not that. But I'm just going to say that for now.
Gonna edge your bets there a little bit. Now, we actually had closed questions. Okay, so closed questions are obviously those types of questions that elicit single word responses, yes, no answers. All right, they're very good at closing a discussion point or validating a discussion point. Okay, as opposed to the open type questions. Now then, Keenan, any thoughts as to perhaps what Jyoti might have been practicing?
I can't remember what all the exact sort of tactics were, but is there a tactic that relates to offering sort of extra things in order to bring someone onto your level? If not, then I would say open questions.
There is no way you were going to get this one. Sorry.
All
right. Which I wonder, I mean, we'll go into a little bit of feedback on there, but Jyoti, do you feel as if you purposely did this at any point?
Yes.
I know there was a place where I think you definitely did it on purpose, and we'll talk about that. But it's interesting. Now, of course, with things like silence, it's difficult when you've never negotiated with somebody before to know whether they're doing something that they don't normally do. And that's, again, why practicing regularly with people allows you not only to understand how other people negotiate, but also understand your own mannerisms and your own style as well. So again, practice is really important for a lot of reasons. Now then, in terms of your cards, and this is interesting as well, we'll talk about this, but there was a zone that you could agree upon, but it was a fairly narrow one. And in the last sort of 15, 20 seconds, you got into it, which was interesting as well. So generally speaking, that zone of agreement, it can be quite wide, it can be quite narrow. Is it on there? And of course, we have cards where they'll overlap and you can't make an agreement. Okay. Now, I'm going to throw it out there because the whole point is to have some questions. And of course, if you're in the audience, if you've got any questions or any observations, feel free to throw them into the chat as well. But I'm going to give Fred just a couple of minutes. Fred, can you just give a little bit of feedback on your thoughts here? Maybe what could be done differently, what went well, etc.?
Yeah, of course. JT did a cracking job. I'm suspecting you've not been trained in sales before. Is that a fair assumption?
I'm a
You
normal law
naturally-
student.
Yeah, well, no, you naturally did some very good stuff. You were asking questions. And if there's one fundamental thing we talk about in sales, it's we have to ask questions. Because one, we have to understand stuff, but more so than ever, our job as a salesperson is to help the customer understand stuff. And a good question helps somebody to think. So you're asking questions. So you're asking like, what type of apples? I would probably tweak that into what are you going to do with the apples, so that then he can start to think. But I mean, which was awesome, and was helping him get his head around what he was trying to do. We had to get into making some offers and counter offers. That was great. You used a mirror. Oh yeah, I think Phil will probably pick up on that one in a bit. But fair play to you. Many salespeople wouldn't get that. Let me ask a question. I'm going to ask a question here. You said, no, there's no pound of profit in that. Now, do you think that's a good thing for a salesperson to say?
Now I'm hearing it again. No. But that's a thing that just naturally came to me, so I just said it.
Well, actually, it is a good thing to say.
Oh.
But there's no point in you doing business if you're not making any money on it, because you might sell the apples once to Keenan, and then he's got to go and find another supplier another time. So, that actually worked for me. What you're saying was a good thing, and you established that, okay, right, he's now clear where you are on that. He tried again. And another thing you said, which was, again, I thought, excellent. No. It was a firm no. Now, lots of salespeople often get, yeah.
I wrote the same
get
thing.
into that, oh, no, I can't upset the customer. I've got to be their friend. But it wasn't right. So, again, you've given him the indications. I'm not making money on that. No. He's now thinking, okay, right, I'm coming in, nudge it right up. So, lots of stuff in there that if I was working with a salesperson who's been around for a bit and had sales training, I'd be very happy that they were doing, because hopefully they'd been trained to do that and we're doing it deliberately. You've come to, okay, well, this sort of seems to be the way that I want to get a decent agreement with somebody. And so we're using those behaviors to try to get to that balance point. So yeah, I think you did an excellent job. I could talk about questioning and making sense questions and all that stuff till the cows come home, but you still led with an open question to try to establish a little bit of what was going on. So yeah, some great stuff. It's worth watching a replay and seeing what you were doing there, because there's a lot of good things.
Brilliant, thank you.
Excellent.
Thank you for showing us it.
Yeah. Mike, come on, let's have a few minutes from you.
Yeah, I was fascinated when I jumped in and said, Keenan, there's no way you're going to get this. There's a voice in my head, because of the tactic that Jody was supposed to use, silence. And I wonder if there's not some things that are different in your perception, Jody, than my perception. For example, you're a lawyer, right? Who's in the legal field. I don't like to make stereotypes, but there are certain people who gravitate toward that field who are very good at making persuasive arguments. Lawyers tend to be very confident people, like to take control of a situation because you don't want to let the other side take control. Are all those things true of if you're grading yourself?
Well, I'd like to put one thing out there. I'm a lawyer in the making, you can say. I'm still, yeah,
okay.
in the making.
Okay. But to go into that profession, you have to be you have to be bold.
You have to be very bold and persuasive to the point where you're, in a sense, convincing everybody, including yourself. You have to be confident, even if it's a case of the answer is wrong, you still have to deliver it and perform as if you are the correct person, and everybody else has to believe you. Yeah. That's what I've been taught essentially.
That's my experience as well. So my cognitive bias, I'm an only child. I've driven between Miami and Florida and Los Angeles 5 times by myself, only talking to the person at the hotel when I check in. I'm extremely comfortable with silence. It's one of the tactics that I've used in the real world a lot, very successfully. So the voice in your head was probably saying silence, the tactic, is a 1-second pause, a 2-second pause. But I need to start talking. I need to start persuading. I need to take control of this. And on my side, I was like, she's not using silence at all. Because for me, silence might be 5 seconds, 10 seconds. Really awkward for everyone. So my perception is you weren't using silence as a tactic in this. And in your perception, that 1-second delay was you using silence as a tactic. So when I'm negotiating or teaching negotiations, I always talk about the other side sheet of paper and how it's so much more important to be on their sheet of paper and understand where they're from. I want to resist calling it empathy because I think that's a different subject completely. But how someone perceives you is often very different than how we perceive ourselves. So that's what I picked up on, is that you weren't using silence enough in the situation. And it could have also been because you wanted to reach a deal. You had 4 minutes and that big clock is ticking down, 3:50, 3:20, 3, like there's pressure there that in the real world you may not have had. I don't think we've ever reached a deal. We didn't even get as close as you guys were, and you were right there at the finish line. We've never gotten to a deal. And my perception is I'm not worried about the clock. I'm worried about using the tactic. So for both of you, was there a self-imposed pressure to get to yes as a higher priority than to use the tactic?
Yeah, I certainly felt that was there. I just also wanted to say that aspect of sort of taking control, I think Josie did quite well, because I did have the tactic of using closed questions in my head, but I think in the early stages she was the one that was asking me questions, and so I kind of felt like on the back foot a little bit,
Okay.
sort of like, oh, and I thought to myself, I don't want to be this one questions. I want to ask, you questions. But yeah, I did feel quite pressured by the time. Certainly, I think by the time we were around like 1:20 to try and reach an agreement, I think that was me just sort of lurching a bit too early, probably looking a little bit desperate to try and find something. So.
And Jody, did you feel it was a priority to reach a deal more than to use the tactic?
So I would say within the first 3 minutes, I focused on the tactic. I focused on trying to understand exactly what he wanted. And then when it started ticking down, I was like, okay, we kind of need to speed up a little bit. So I started trying to negotiate with the price, because at first I felt like I was kind of probing the situation. You can say the negotiation, sorry. And then closer to the time, that's when I started focusing on, okay, let's reach a deal.
Okay.
It's
So,
interesting.
yeah.
I was just going to say, because of the time as well, the time constraints, something like the use of silence is doubly tough, because you're feeling as if you're using it.
I had pause, consider, respond, which really is a subset of silence. That pause in there, and under the table, my knees were shaking because I was like, we need to reach a deal. This in the first one that we did, because I'm competitive and I want to reach a deal. But I was so focused on using the tactic that some of the other things I didn't like. And as an outcome of the negotiation. But yeah, sometimes we get in our own head on these things. One thing I'm going to compliment. So Keenan, you did a good job on the closed-ended questions. What's the best offer? And then you were quiet. So you were forcing a number. I want to know what your number is. And it was $750 a ton. And you said no, like a fairly hard no, not going to happen. So that was good. And then I also want to give compliments on Jody on yours. You did the hard no too. There was a time though, Keenan, where she said 750 and you said, Now 750 was so far outside your budget. That should have been a hard no. When you said, it could be confusing to her that, oh, maybe I'm close. Because he didn't say, you're out of your mind, get out of here. So I think that's where you could have improved it, when you, instead of saying, just saying no. Period. Not going to happen.
Okay. Yeah, there's lots of little things to give feedback on there, which is really good as well. I'm just gonna pick up on a couple of points here as well, just to add to this. So lovely little start, which is great. Keenan, you're coming to buy apples and you're a farmer. I thought, Jyoti, you really needed to ask, why are you buying apples if you're a farmer? You know, for whatever reasons. It's like, I thought, where's this going to go? I thought, Keenan, you might
Is
be
that to
thinking
feed the
you're a seller.
pigs? You know,
The pig
because
apples,
I like that.
The pig apples that you invented.
I literally, I did have that in my head. I wanted to see if she would ask, but that was what I was going to say. I just have
I think
pigs.
Phil called them the wormers the last time we all got together.
I thought that was you called them the wormers, or Fred might call them, but yeah, I think it was you came up with the wormers. Yeah, I mean,
I think I did. You're right.
Yeah, it's interesting because Keenan, you had in your mind at the beginning how you're going to set some expectations. You know, so you're working on a farm, and as you said, you're almost waiting for Jyoti to ask, because you can say, "Oh, it's for the pigs," so I really want low quality. But actually, you didn't even get a chance to suggest that. So, and again, you've just got to be careful that once you go into a negotiation, even if you have a planned approach, it's not always going to work out for you. The other party doesn't always play ball. Okay, so you didn't really get to that point. So we never found out that you really wanted cheap apples, which might have, again, influenced it. But some really good questions, as we've already had there from Jyoti. You know, what type? Don't really care. Do you want green or red ones? It's really about the price. I'm cash strapped. Farming is a lot of expensive. What's your best offer? Okay, so kind of a closed question. What's your best offer? Now, you did a bit of a summary here, Jyoti, which again is really useful. So you're only just looking for the 1 ton. Usually we go larger. I like it if you could summarize a bit more, because it actually just means that there's more information missing or not. And even at that time, it's just 1 ton at the moment, but you actually brought some other variables in, which you could have actually asked there. Okay, so you're looking for 1 ton. Will this be how regular will this be? Okay, so ask some more variables maybe to get a few more bits in there. So even if you don't,
ask a question. Jody asked red or green, and I'm ignorant. I don't know about apples. Had he said red or green, was there a sales technique that you were going to respond with? Oh, you want the greens? Oh, those are a premium. Or oh, you want the reds? Oh, those are a premium. Is there a proper response to that?
Yes, that's exactly what I was going to do, actually. Sort of say,
no matter what he said, red or green, that was going to be the premium apple.
They were the best ones at the league.
Okay.
Yeah.
I really could foresee that, because I remember being victim to something like that some time ago, and I just thought, you know what, I wouldn't pick. I just whatever color is the cheapest.
You didn't entertain that, which was very noted, actually. I was trying to force it a little bit, but you didn't.
Right. So I'm just going to make an observation here again, which is information is really important, but you're both asking questions. You're not getting the answers you really want. So, and then you kind of move straight on. So perhaps, just ask it again, repeat it. Yeah, okay, kid, I know you don't really, it makes a difference to us. Is it green or red you want? Just try and get it. Because if it doesn't really matter, it doesn't matter, but just try and get them to say something, because then you can at least introduce a variable as a range in there as well. And likewise, Keenan, at that moment, you can say, look, I'm feeding him to the pigs. Don't really care, but if you really want a preference, I'll have the red ones. Joji's like, well, they're the expensive ones. I'll have the green ones then. All right. But
right.
Try and follow through on your questions. Don't just ask a question. If you don't get an answer, walk away from it. Do persist a little bit more than you are. Okay.
Phil, just to jump in, classic thing we'll train people in sales is to ask the first question as an open question. What, why, when, where, who, how. Whatever answer you get, TED question to follow up.
Tell me more.
Tell me, explain, describe.
Yeah.
Almost automatic, so you don't have to think about it. You're going to ask a question and then you're going to use another thing to go a little bit deeper.
Yeah.
It almost becomes unconscious that's what you do.
Yeah, and again, that comes with the practice as well. I mean, you've mentioned this, before on this one as well. And the questions, information is so important in all negotiations, and it's great to practice it. But remember, you're asking questions. You need to be mindful of the answers, both of, are you getting the answers that you want, or is it information you're going to be able to use? So, always be careful of that. Okay. Now, we did have, this is where I did hear a bit of a silence here, Jyoti, where you said, well, I could give you an offer of, and then I just said ... because you paused for a long time, and then you said £750 a ton. Okay. So did you purposely use a silence there before you did that?
Yeah, that was purpose.
Okay. All right. I kind of like that. And one of the reasons why I like that is that what you're doing is you're setting the other person up to be listening intently for that position. And then as soon as they hear that position, you're going to see how they react to it. Okay. So it gives you an opportunity to do that. We often find people make a proposal, but they're often very nervous that it ends up coming out and it's so quick or it's jumbled up with other things that you don't get that. Go on.
I'm sorry, I was going to say actually a good way to remember that technique could actually be as like described as a bowling alley. You're creating that weight as you like obviously you're ready to bowl and stuff, and then once you've said it, that smackdown is there and it's full house essentially.
Yeah.
So that was going on in my head.
And that's great because you're already, in a way, you're visualizing this as well. But I like that. That was a definite purposeful silence, and I like that silence. It's setting the other party to, okay, what's she going to say? Okay. Now, what I would do here
and
is
the visual that I got when you said that is this ball rolling slowly, and everyone's wondering where is it going to hit? Is it going to hit on the pin? How many are going to fall? And that suspense is very intriguing. I like the visual that you painted there, Jody.
Now, Keenan, the other thing there we've just heard from Jyoti is that she's a visual person. Okay, so again, if you know the type of person that's on the other side, whether they're visual, kinetic, oral, you can actually change your language slightly to actually speak to the other person even more so. However, this is where Keenan I'm going to pick up, and actually Mike has picked up on this. When you heard the 750, the 750 is generally it's outside of your budget. Okay, so it should be a nice and easy no at that point. But you went, you looked down, and then you had a closed question. Are you able to go lower? Okay, so it's a closed question. Are you able to go lower? Personally, going back to Mike, the first thing you should do is probably reject it because you can't accept it. About Jyoti, no, I'm afraid that really will not work for us. And then maybe ask a question, but I would be mindful not necessarily to ask a closed question like that after you've had the price, because you're almost closing any further discussions or argument. It's 750. So rather than saying, can you go lower, maybe just suggest, look, we're going to have to go lower than that if we're going to find an agreement. So rather than have it as a question, have it as a statement. Okay. Yeah. However, this is where Jyoti said, well, okay, tell me, what about, could you have some more on the quantity? To come back with a question. Now we're looking at other variables. And what I liked here, Jyoti, is you didn't say yes or no, but you gave an inclination that there's some other alternative you can deal with here, which is the variables. Potentially, but then you had your counter keen in here, so I could probably do 400. Now, I think when you put the 400, I think you did couch it with a bit of soft language. It wasn't a clear, listen, I'm looking at paying £400 here. It was probably can do. So again, just tighten up the language a little bit. Jyoti, yeah, I'm looking for a price of £400 a ton here. Now, when they heard the 400, Jyoti, that was, again, in this particular case, below your break even. So it, again, is an easy no in a way. And your mouth pulled up. Ooh, it was like that. But you started nodding. Okay, which I thought, okay, you're nodding and you're pulling out. Okay, so all right. And you said 400 is quite low. Okay, so it wasn't an immediate no. The non-verbals are suggesting that it didn't look too much of a pressured position, and it's a quite low. All right. So I've been a little bit more forceful. He can't agree to it. So as Mike says and Fred said, sorry, Keenan, that will work. No, that'll definitely not work for us at all.
Hey, can we go back to something that Fred had mentioned, and I've had it written down too, not a pound of profit in it. So what does that mean? Does that mean it's at zero margin? So I can do 400, but you're not making any pounds at all? Or does that mean it's below what you can sell it for? It's a negative, it's at a loss.
Yeah, B. Sorry.
Well, that's what you intend. But as a buyer, if I hear there's no profit in that, buyers hear you say, well, it's possible you're just not making enough money. So I can get 400 if I can get you to take a lower profit margin. So that it almost needs to be, so the buyer hears it properly, more forceful. 400, that's a loss, which technically is the same thing as not making any profit, but it's more forceful and more powerful to the person hearing it.
And it's stronger language than quite low. Yeah, quite low it's just quite low. That's not a no.
Hey, I want to give credit to a lady that took my class, and they sold some items in their portfolio that were fairly commodity items, but they were a value add seller. So the question was asked in front of the group. They said, well, what do you do when somebody has the pricing and they know what they can get it somewhere else, and they just say, here's the price of your competitor online. You can find it. I can find it. I'm not going to pay any more than that. What do you say? And she said, well, here's what I say. I say, do you want me to miss my mortgage? Because I could sell it to you at that price, but I won't be able to make my mortgage if I sell it to you at that price. And I thought, wow, now she's bringing in emotion. She's bringing in the relationship with the other side. She's finding out, by the way, if the other side wants her to miss her mortgage, well, bad news early is good news. I'm going to fire you as the client if you don't care enough that I make my mortgage payment. So sure, I could do it at that, but I don't make enough money is very different than that's a loss. But
it is, but I think the other thing here is that we tend not to be quite strong in our rejections. I often talk about the fact that we're social animals, so we don't like to say no to people, and that comes out often in negotiations. We should be far more comfortable to say no when we can't agree, because that's part of the process. We've got to make it clear to the other party, otherwise the other party might actually think they're onto a deal here. It's not going to work. So you've got to let them know. Be forceful with it. It's not going to work. And when you're ready to start making agreements, you'll suddenly find that once it starts to become an acceptable position, thing gets warmed up. The language changes as well. And again, that's what you should be looking for here. Now, we're going a bit on the time here, so I'm just going to pick up a couple of other things. So there's just one thing here, Jyoti, where you kind of said, there's no pound of profit in that. Could this be a regular thing? Perhaps every month, maybe 2 months? I just want to pick up on that. Maybe it's a bit of a picky little point, but you're asking a question and then you're giving some more solutions to that. So perhaps ask a question and see what the other party comes back with, because they may want it every week, or it might be every 6 months or anything else. So again, it's always difficult with asking a question is not embellishing it or adding more information to it. Yeah, Keenan, like I said, could this be a regular order? And what would that look like? Rather than giving the answers to them beforehand. Give the answers to them if that helps you, of course. Now, I'm going to go all the way down to the last couple of minutes, because this is where it got interesting, because once we got 600 and then we hit 550 was the first time it was inside and both of you could agree to that. All right. And then what happened then was, instead of any kind of, all right, I can do 750 for 2 tons every 2 months, it ended up being, I can do 575. Can you do 572? No, I can do 575. And it becomes what I call a tic-tac-toe, because you can actually agree to that. It depends on who's going to stick in the longest and not agree to it, which is always a curious thing that happens at some of the end of these negotiations. However, we have been rambling for a long time here. So listen, silence is definitely a skill in its own right. I mean, people talk about a tactic. It is a skill. There are some right places to use it. There are some wrong places to use it. It's far more versatile than what a lot of people expect it to be, which is just make it awkward. There are some places that, coming up to a proposal, go silent, get the other people on the edge of their seat, listening, give them the information nice and crisp, see how they respond. Closed questions, very, very useful. But as we can see here, there are perhaps some places where a closed question is perhaps the wrong thing to do. So again, just pause. Mike's already said, pause, consider, and so on. Before you ask that question, just slow down. Does this trap me? Does this stop the negotiations? Because that effectively was going to be a kind of a negotiation stopper. Right, I'm going to call it there because we've had over 45 minutes doing this. And it's only a 4-minute practice, and yet we can have a good 40 minutes conversation around it as well. Jyoti, Keenan, first of all, I just want to thank you so much. Jyoti, you've only been doing it for 4 weeks. Keenan, you've been doing it for 4 years, all right? So a bit more practice from all of us is going to be good for all of us as well. Fred, thank you so much for your perspective and your take on the sales side and your insight as well. Likewise, Mike, yours as well. For those of you who are watching and maybe get to the end of this, if you do want to practice your negotiation skills, do it. All right? Don't watch, don't just read about it, don't even go on courses. You know, you've got to practice. And there are places now for doing that. There are other negotiation clubs out there you can go to. You can join the negotiation club here that we have, and you can even go and have a practice every month with us as well. Okay, so just go to the website. So with that, I'm going to say we're going to end it there. And any final comments? Keenan, any final thoughts from you?
Yeah, just like you say, always good to get in some practice. Just hopefully not become too rusty. Obviously, with going sort of so long without having some practice. But I thought it was good fun. Yeah, enjoyed it.
Well, you got a deck of cards. You'll have to take them into your training contract and just get them all practicing there as well. All right. Jyoti, final thoughts from you?
Actually, mine's the opposite. Finishing this last session yesterday, putting it into practice today. I had actually a list of all the things that you had on your spreadsheet yesterday, and that's right in front of me. I'm going to get it out. Literally like that. And I'm there crossing it out because I'm trying to make sure actively that I am applying it. So this has been a very good experience, actually.
Brilliant. And the more you do it, I promise you, the more you do it, the better you get, the more comfortable you get with it as well. And it will show. And you're at your age where, as Mike and Fred have said, we've got a lot of garbage on our heads. You know, you've got an opportunity at the beginning of your careers to really make a difference. And it will show. A little bit will make a big difference. Yeah. Right. So on that, I guess, Mike, Fred, it's so long and farewell to everybody. And everybody else, we'll see you again. Take care. Bye-bye.